because I want to have it done before I go to Vegas to the dinner. So I started it, and I am enjoying it immensely so far. I'm not very far into it, but I'm having a great time with it.
Well, we are live now, guys. So good morning, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I want to go ahead and welcome you all here to the LitRPG convention, Gildycon. Everything is going to be streamed on the YouTube channel today, so get on there to leave all your comments. Knowing that there is some issues with Facebook, if you're trying to get there, we're not going to be having the streams there directly. We want to be able to interact directly with you guys, so that you guys can talk and ask questions to your panelists. Today we are starting off with what we are calling Welcome to LitRPG, because of the inside joke with Matt Dinneman. So we're going to be talking about everything LitRPG. Where did it start? Where did it come from? How has it improved over time? What kind of trends are we seeing and where things are going? And I want to welcome all of our panelists here, and I'm going to give each of you a chance at the very beginning to go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you're working on and where we can find your stuff. Brian, why don't we start with you?
Yes. I am Brian J. Norden, and I write a series called Quest Academy, and I'm writing book 4 at the moment. And yeah, book 3 just came out. Really happy with its release, and the audiobook will be available on the 28th of January. You can find me on Amazon or a very, very outdated profile on Royal Road. Don't read that story; it's not very good.
Real quick, I'd like to say Brian Norden, fantastic writer, terrible person. But don't let his off-putting personality detract you from reading his book, which is absolutely phenomenal, really good. Again, mediocre person at best.
It's not your turn, James. Shut the fuck up. It's not your turn, James.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Definitely one of those case of don't meet your heroes there, James A. I see. All right. Rachel, the beautiful Rachel Niekirk. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're working on and what you've got going?
I will in 2 seconds, but I have to say, James, you were saying like completely true things about Brian, but unfortunately all I could hear was the Rhys Darby impression you did when you played Woodle, the murderous redcap who was bad at murdering in our D&D game. That's all I can hear. So if you just see me like laughing randomly when you're speaking, it's because I'm thinking of Woodle.
I still have those pictures that I drew in crayon. They're in my office somewhere. I meant to bring them to DragonCon. I forgot, but I haven't gotten rid of them yet. They're here.
Love it. Love it. Sorry. So my name is Rachel Niekirk. I am a wee baby author. My first trilogy is about to be finished. Yes, a LitRPG can be finished. It's very exciting. It's finished in 2 weeks' time. And the first 2 books, Desecrate and Calamity, are already out. They're narrated by Andrea Parsons. And book 3 is coming out 1st of November, and the audiobook will be out next year. So yeah, very exciting. Hey, TJ.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. And now we'll move on to the prolific Harmon Cooper. Why don't you go ahead and let us know what's coming up with you?
Hey, everybody. I'm Harmon Cooper. I have published a lot of LitRPG books. I think maybe 12 finished series or more. I kind of lose track of them, but you can find all my information at harmoncooper.com. I publish on Royal Road as Goblin Wrangler, and I have a new post-apocalyptic LitRPG on there right now called Doom System Survivor. And yeah, that's it. Right now on Amazon, I have 2 ongoing series. A Pub in the Underworld has another book, and Reborn Assassin has another book as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Harmon. And we'll move on to the illustrious James Hunter.
So I'm James Hunter. I'm a writer. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, which is disgusting, and I hate myself a little bit for that. But I'm still here. I have not given up yet, which is, I guess I'm going to call that a win. I've written a lot of books, not as many as Harmon, which is rare because I usually write more than everybody. But man, Harmon, he's a machine. I am the author of the Visual Bound series, which is great. My phone is ringing. I have a house phone. That's how old.
That's me calling you.
I'm sure it's a spam
James,
call.
Hey.
God. Okay. Rogue Dungeon.
Do you like when people talk like this on their phone, James? That always fucking bothers me when they're like, "Hey, blah 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 blah."
Right there, in front of your face, where I can hear the conversation. Pretty Gate Online, big finished series, 8 books, massive expanded universe with 25 or 26 other novels from various authors. And the newest one that I'm working out, which is not out yet, is oh my god. Discount Dan, I'm good. I do this for a living. I am very professional. This one will be out Q1, I think March of 2025. But if you really want to read it, you can go check it out on Royal Road, Discount Dan. That's it. I'm done. It's a rocky start, but I promise we're going to get there, guys. It's going to be great.
All
I
right.
absolutely picked the wrong group to boast about a finished LitRPG. Second I said it, I was like, nope, wrong panel. Shouldn't have said anything.
I think Daniel Shithope has even more. I think he's got like 5 or 6 or 7 finished series. He's got so many.
Yeah, and after being interrupted like 7 times, James, I do not believe that you're done. So we'll move on to the magnificent Daniel Shinhoffen. Why don't you go ahead and let us know what you've got going?
Well, I mean, I don't want to throw a Kirk or a knee Kirk under the bus with finished series, so I'll let her off the hook. I have many series like James. I'm quite prolific. I have not pimped myself out to other authors to sell their books with their names, though. So, of course, James, was pimping my book at the start of the panel, which was quite amusing to me because I still wonder why people read my books. As you can see under my name there, it says Dirty, Filthy Harem Writer, so people are warned ahead of time. I don't want people to get confused that you're going to find good child-friendly content with my books. But the next book I actually have coming out is the second book of the series that James was pimping for me. Heavenly Chaos 2, Fighting Past Pain, comes out at the end of the month. I'm trying to slip it in before Cinnamon crushes everybody with the next book in Dungeon Crawler Carl. So, yeah. So Heavenly Chaos 2 is my next book out. It'll be at the end of the month. That'll be fun. I'm quite looking forward to more mental anguish from the fans. I mean, the adoration. Yes.
Well, thank you, Daniel. And I don't think you have too much to be worried about there. From books that I've already read already, you're going to get my money for sure. I am more than happy to pick up the next one. All right. So again, LitRPig. Welcome to LitRPig.
What about you, Ryan? Who are you, and what things do you write?
Oh, I am just the moderator here today, but I guess my name is Ryan Maxwell. I am an author with Legion Publishers, and I have written the series Grand System Vending. They're currently all up on Royal Road. All 3 books are complete and off to editors now, so hopefully we'll be seeing those in the not too distant future, moving past that point. But that's what I've written so far. I do appreciate that, James. But again, we're talking about welcoming everybody to LitRPG. Maybe this is some people's first time here. Everybody that I'm seeing in the comments I can see is probably not their first time, but what do you guys think of the start of LitRPG? Where do you think that, I want to see what you guys' opinions on where that came from. There's a lot of controversy on where that may have started or began with at the beginning of, in different places. Some people saying it came from Japan, other people saying it originated in Russia, and then there's people saying that it originated in the United States. I want to hear what you guys know, or what you guys have found out through research on what that goes with. Harmon, I'm seeing you with some really good expressions there on your mask, I guess is what we're going to go with. So why don't you go ahead and take that question first?
Well, I personally started writing in the genre in 2015 by accident. So my journey with LitRPG is a little bit different. But it is a kind of funny enough story to mention on a panel, because I don't think I've been on panels with James before, but I don't think anyone's heard this. So in like around 2010, I took mushrooms with my dad and I gave up video games. I was just like, video games are wasting my time. I cannot play any more video games. And so naturally, I didn't play video games for about 5 years, and I just started writing about them because I missed them so much. And that's how I came into the genre. And then I read one of Travis Bagwell's books, and I saw that he was from Texas, from Austin, and I'm from Austin. So I emailed him to say, like, hey, man, I'm from Texas too. And then he introduced me to everyone. And so the rest is history. That's how I came into it. As for the term, it's really, from what I know, I was already writing it in 2015 without knowing that I was doing that. But technically, if we're going to get technical, I think the history of it is Russia, Korea, sometime one of those two was doing it first. And then it's become what it is now, but it didn't start in America. Even though there were Americans in 2015 doing something LitRPG adjacent, or even you could argue Ready Player One, was LitRPG adjacent. It didn't technically term that until Russia and Korea. James probably knows more though.
To kind of follow up with that, I would say that the sort of the origins of it are definitely like the oldest iterations of it are sort of South Korea, but the earliest versions that came to an American audience were the translated Russian lit RPG novels, and this is kind of like late 2014, early 2015, before sort of the first wave of American authors. So books like Way of the Shaman, Play to Live, these were kind of the two big staples that came out first in America. That's where I sort of got my start. I was reading lit RPG in 2015. I had stumbled on Way of the Shaman, and I had not heard the term lit RPG yet. I remember reading through it and just thinking like, what the fuck is this? And also, why am I strangely aroused by this and need more of it? Like, it was so confusing because I had never read anything even remotely like it. And so I went in the rabbit hole. I remember reading all the way through everything Way of the Shaman had to offer, which I think was only 4 books at that point. And then I had found D. Russ's Play to Live series, which is also another Russian translated series. And then that was kind of it on the Russian side. I quickly found the lit RPG that existed in the American audience. And at that point, I think Luke Chemelenko had Ascend up, Travis had Awaken, and Alaron had The Land, obviously. And that was kind of my jumping off point to American lit RPG. But there wasn't a lot. I mean, total, there were like 10 series maybe inside of the lit RPG sort of umbrella. And I remember tearing through those kind of 2015 and thinking, oh my God, I need more of this. Why is there not more of this? And that was kind of the impetus for me to start writing. I'd been writing urban fantasy before, but I was like, I'm going to do this on the back burner because I am slowly becoming obsessed with this weird genre that I don't fully understand. In terms of the actual term lit RPG, though, I think it was pioneered by those Russian authors who had translated their works and put them on Amazon early on.
I'm sorry to hear that you have impetus. They make pills for that now, James.
I appreciate that, Daniel. I appreciate that. I'll be sure to pass that on to my lovely wife.
I have to side with James though. The term lit RPG, I think I first heard from the Play to Live series, D. Russ, when my friend gave me that book as one of the first lit RPGs I ever read, and then he already cataloged all the other series, Way of the Shaman, of course, Ailerons, and then Bagwell, and so on and so on. But the first time I read something that even was remotely lit RPG-like was actually Dream Park back when I was in high school. Since that takes place, Larry Niven and I forget who else, that has a augmented reality game system as part of the story. So, I mean, if you want to go with the term, I'll throw it to the Russians, South Koreans, but there have been stories of lit RPG nature that you can go back further if you want to.
Did you ever read the Otherland series by Tad Williams?
That sounds familiar.
That was kind of one of the first like pre-lit RPG that I ever read, and it doesn't really have like the game mechanics in the same way that like modern lit RPG does, but it's kind of this weird augmented virtual reality sort of character progression-y thing that sort of doesn't fit cleanly into the box, but was a genuinely amazing series.
I mean, if we want to widen the umbrella, you can always go back to Tron too. Man, pulled into the game. So the genre overall, if you want to look and find things that fit under it, there's a massive amount. But the term, I have to agree, I first stumbled upon it. Yes, I'm an author. Words hard.
You've used up all your words. It's okay. We understand.
So, my editors aren't here to help me this morning. They're asleep like normal people because it's 7 o'clock in the morning where I live. But yeah, I'm done.
All right, Rachel, I'm going to pass this one to you real quick so that you get a chance to say something.
I haven't fucking spoke either.
I think that was the point, Brian.
And then you went and you fucking ruined it, man.
We were waiting to give you a bigger question, Brian, but now you're right.
I love Brian. I don't want people to think I love him so much.
Well, I'm glad at least someone likes him, James. So anyway, I was first introduced to LitRPG by this real piece of shit. His name was Brian, and I had never heard of it, but he was going on about it. He's like, "Oh, you should check it out." And I am extremely new to this. I've only been writing in it for 2 years, and I've been reading it for like 3 or 4. And when I started reading it, so I am only familiar with modern LitRPG, so it had already kind of solidified into kind of the beautiful hot mess express it is now that I absolutely adore. But I was absolutely blown away by it because it's so different to anything. And as to its origins, I maybe it was Russia, maybe it was South Korea, maybe it was a bit of both, but it really reminds me of, so anime in Japan, kind of, there was some form of anime the entire time. It goes back to 1917 with some of the earliest animated films, but it only really kicked off in the 1970s. But the reason it kicked off was as a result, they were looking at American cartoons and going, fuck these guys, we can do better. And I really feel like something kind of similar happened with like American LitRPG. It was like people were looking at all these amazing stories happening, and they're like, "Oh, we can do our own." And so maybe one thing was as a reaction of the other, but I think it's kind of become a beast unto itself, but in the best way possible. Everything from, I read one that was a horror movie LitRPG recently called Carousel. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was so cool and totally different. Great book.
Oh, good.
And to like slice of life, like isekai ones, like heretical fishing. So I forgot what the original question was, but yeah, it's great.
My takeaway is that LitRPG exists because of spite writing. That's my only takeaway from your thing, is that we're all a bunch of spiteful, petty assholes, and I really love that for you, Rachel.
That's my hot take. It's probably incorrect, but that's my hot take.
All right, Brian. Well, we'll let you have a turn.
Spoon is on a table. Damn right, it's James Hunter.
It was not me. It was not me. I thought it was because I messed up every other thing, but it was not me.
For me, the legendary Moonlight Sculptor was the first kind of foray into the sort of like LitRPG landscape. And it's the VR MMO RPG. And it was like one of the biggest ones. And like there were countless fan translation websites all across the internet. But the game inside of the legendary Moonlight Sculptor was called Royal Road. And they eventually created a fan site called Royal Road, where people did the translations and of it. But people then were like in the forums being like, fuck, like, need more of this. Like, are there other stories? And then it started turning into what we now know as Royal Road today, with something like 60, 80,000 stories on it. So I always attribute it back to the legendary Moonlight Sculptor for me, because it was one of the classics, and it has the greedy MC that's, the edgelord, the kind of like, this is me. It had so much heart in it, and it was brilliant, and it was VR. And I think that it had so many copycats, but going in different verticals and things like that, which was really, really good. But for me personally, with my writing journey, I remember reading Weed isn't just a character name, yeah. But I remember reading Ready Player One and getting so irrationally angry. I was like, you were the chosen one. Like, you could have been amazing. And this is shit. It was just pop culture references and nostalgia bait. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This could have been amazing. And then I just my friends were like, Brian, why don't you just fucking write something yourself? And I was like, okay, I will. And then Wild Cards was born, and then that learning from that turned into Quest Academy. So that was my personal journey. But I think the Koreans really have this one pegged, because I still look at everything they're doing and I'm like, oh, Regression is coming soon.
I think they're like 3 years upstream from where maybe it's 2 years, but they're definitely upstream. And some of the Japanese manga and some of that other stuff is as well. And like all of that is sort of like trickling down into the American markets. But like everything that we're seeing sort of on the trends and on the rise here is happening there first by like a year or two ahead. So like if you have an eye or you're a writer and you're like, hey, what's coming next? Like just start reading there, and you're going to see kind of these new evolving tropes that are slowly already starting to seep in and make their way onto Royal Road and then onto Amazon.
But
that's correct. That's correct. Like you can basically just go to Webtoons and see what's going on there and see like, this would work. So if someone is watching this panel to get inspired by what they should write next, that would be a good place to look. It'd be like if there was a place where romance authors published what would be popular 2 or 3 years from now, and you could get ahead of things. So, I mean, I guess that's a big tip and a secret, but that it's a real thing. But then you still have to write it and do all the work, and that part sucks sometimes.
Very true.
But just one other factor on it is like one of the things I do love about like with the South Korean like sort of media types is that it's such a subversion of expectations. If you've ever watched a K-drama, and like I remember I was watching one, it was like one of the top rated ones on Netflix. It was Itaewon Class, and I was like, oh, it's a story about revenge. And I was like, you know, in your head you're already finishing the story of being like, oh, they eventually learn the error of their ways, learn to forgive the person that did this, and then live happily ever after. Fucking no. It's like, no, they're on their knees begging for mercy. It's like, nah, fuck them up further. I was like, what is this? And I think it's brilliant because in all of their stories, the Western sort of approach is completely different. So I'm looking at this going like, this is refreshing. I love this. And I think so many readers are finding that within story types, within worlds that they are invested in and they love.
So on that point real quick though, because I think again, if you're an aspiring author, you're an author and you're like, oh, where's LitRPG going? And you're looking at some of these foreign markets to see kind of what they're doing. There is this sense of like, it's not going to be adapted perfectly to the American audience, right? Like you cannot take carbon copy what they're doing and apply it here and expect success, because some of the things that they do are things that American audiences absolutely loathe. And I'm going to pitch it to Daniel Shinhofen here. There's a lot of like sort of harem series over in sort of like Mangoland, but like the protagonist never ever gets with these women. He has these entire flocks of women that are like, you know, fluttering around him, in love with him, and pushing their boobs into his face, and he's just bleeding from the nose and the eyeballs, and he never ever gets with these women. And American readers would absolutely drop kick you into a volcano if you did that. So Daniel, maybe you could speak to that a little bit about like how do you know what to translate, what not to?
But to say, I think the word you were looking for was different sensibilities, James.
That's okay.
Different countries have different sensibilities.
So you're good with the words, Daniel.
Yes, when I have time to think about things, and when you talk, we all have time because no one else is going to be able to. So
sorry, guys.
But
he's dropping bombs on me, guys.
But yes, one of the reasons I
is this a fucking roast? What are we doing here? Is this a roast?
Yes, let's all continue roasting James.
No, we're going back to Brian here shortly. Don't let him throw us off, guys. Remember, it's the Brian roast. We're just chipping in on James because why not? The idea of changing the Japanese anime manga trope of all the women around the man, and maybe he has a clue, but 90 times out of 100 he has no clue, even when they're literally throwing themselves at him, is something that I think a lot of people from a more Western base are like, okay, but why are you so stupid? And I like to think that they're basically just James, and then that explains Japanese main characters to me without a problem.
I'm not stupid. I'm clueless. All right, they're separate things. You're
right. You're right.
The Venn diagram is not a circle, Daniel.
You are correct, and that is why I have a clue by 4, so you can be hit in the back of the head and get a fucking clue.
Man, Daniel, he is on today, guys. He's in rare form. This is good stuff.
Another thing I would add to what Daniel said. Is the taboo situation. So in the Western, we have a different world than they have. They have very different. I lived in Japan for nearly a year, and they have very different views on sex. They had views on sex that were warped by American soldiers that occupied the region. But before that, like if there's a book on Yoshiwara, which was the original red light district in Tokyo that you can read, they had a very different view on these types of relationships than we do. And something like a harem is actually very taboo in the West. So there's like someone who's an expert at it, like Daniel's also playing with a taboo as well that like appeals to people that's different than how that taboo would appeal to people in Japan.
So we've talked a lot about a lot of different things coming in here. One thing that I want to see about maybe bringing a little bit of light to, because it's kind of a controversial thing that people talk about a lot in the forums and in the social media sites. I see this all the time. I'm in there in the comments trying to be interacting with people, letting them know that, I love having discussions about this as well. I talk with friends online. I talk with friends in person. I talk with all different people about this. I talk with my wife, who just tells me to shut up most of the time. And I'm talking about kind of that umbrella thing that Daniel brought up of what kind of styles of writing end up falling under LitRPG. There's a lot of different people who have a lot of different opinions on what kind of things fall under there. I know that there's kind of a classic standard of video game elements with a stat style improvement. Sometimes we move a little bit further out of that into the genre style with the progression fantasies that we have as well that kind of fall under that umbrella. But then you hear some of those people come in who maybe don't know a whole lot about what all kind of falls under that umbrella, and people will bring up things like just plain old isekai, which doesn't necessarily fit quite into the lit RPG, except when they do have stats or skills put into there. I'm curious to see what kind of thoughts and opinions you each have on what all ends up being housed under the umbrella of the genre lit RPG as a whole. And Brian, since I've been being mean, sorry, we'll start with you this time.
No worries. Less time to think, but that's fine. I think the one of the ways I describe it is the visual representation of progression, as in like, or it is the the game mechanics that are central to the plot, as in like, so what we would consider game mechanics could essentially just be progression mechanics that are akin to games. It's not like anyone is saying like, oh, back when we were writing VR MMO, people were like, oh, a real game can't do that. And it's like, that's why it's a fucking book, mate. Because we can.
It doesn't have to be balanced.
It doesn't have to be
fun.
balanced. So, but it's like, is this something that is central to your plot, or is it something that has been tacked on to try and just like, cash in on a genre that's doing well? So for me, I really, really don't like gatekeeping. I really don't think that it's healthy in any way or form. Like, it's like asking someone just like, what does it mean to be American? Not everyone is going to, well, everyone might say freedom, but but you know what I mean? Isn't like that? Not everyone's going to have the same definition, but it doesn't make anyone wrong. So with lit RPG, I've seen those same comments of being like, is this a subset of progression fantasy, or is that a subset of game lit, or is game lit this, or is this that? It's like, whatever the fuck you want, mate. As in, like, some might argue, like I've heard from Eric Ugland in the past, where he said, like, that lit RPG is more of a technique and that it can be applied to multiple different genres and writing styles, which is why we have stories like Carousel. It's like, it's not necessarily within the fantasy and sci-fi space. It's taking on a completely different genre and applying that style to it. So I think that this is a fledgling sort of community that is almost like a style of writing that I think can be applied across the board. And I'm really interested to see, like, the Pride and Prejudice lit RPG. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing, Mr. Darcy leveling up. Like, these are the sort of things that I think would be really, really fun in the future.
So real quick, I have to say a thing since you brought this up. So Eric Ugland and I have been talking on Discord about doing a really awful progression fantasy novel called Pride and Prejudice and Progression, where we each write a chapter and go back and forth, but you can only do one pass. That's it. So you just keep watching, Brian. That thing is going to tank harder than anything has tanked before, but boy, is it going to be fun.
There's a Pride progression, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and it did amazing. So it can work, man. It can work.
It will not, but we're going to do it anyways because we're idiots.
All right. Daniel, how about you? You want to jump in on some of this as well?
Sorry, he said it, Eric. He said it. Now I had to say it. This
so
is
Did you skip me?
Yes,
I did skip you. I'm coming back.
Rachel, he said no Rachel this time. Apparently the redhead was just too powerful. But you know what? I am a gentleman. Go ahead, Rachel.
No, I'm teasing. I was just being a dickhead. Daniel, you take it. You are far more eloquent than me.
No, Daniel's really the one pulling all the strings, so now you have to go, Rachel.
This is what I get for seeing a moment to be a dickhead and taking it. What defines lit RPG? That was the question, right?
What kind of things do you feel like fall under the umbrella of lit RPG? And
I would actually very much agree with Brian. Like, I would even say, like, as long as there's some form of progress. I know. It's even Broken Clock is right twice a day. There is like, as long as there's some element of progression, and I am the same. Like, I think if we get so in the trenches about arguing whether or not like something is lit RPG or game lit or progression or like does cultivation count under it now? Because you can really get so lost in the weeds when at the end of the day all of us love stories, and that's why we're here, and we love being like one of the really cool things about LitRPG is it's so grassroots, and so many people here would not necessarily have ever found a foothold in, say, trad publishing, because it would be like, oh, we can't take a risk on my random batshit insane story here because I couldn't take that risk, but you can in LitRPG. So for me, it literally doesn't have some element of progression. But like, because I mentioned Carousel earlier, there is progression, but so much of it is just about like survival. Like that's it straight up the bat. And they're in a horror movie. I read I Ran Away to Evil by Mystic Neptune. And okay, there is like, she levels up once in the entire book. That's it. But she has a whole bunch of stats. It's built into the entire world. It is an aspect of every single day, everyday daily life. That is an amazing example of LitRPG slice of life for me. So yeah, I think if you start like cutting and pasting and I think you'll miss out on really great books. Superpowers is by Drew Hayes. Orconomics by Zachary Pike. I see those get recommended a lot. They're not LitRPG technically, but they're still amazing books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I've also just realized in this listening that I'm going to have a new type of meat to get to smoke sometime soon, because pig wings are something that I'm looking forward to, that they fly now, since you've agreed with Brian for the first time ever. I hope they're bigger than chicken wings. That's all I have to say on that subject. Daniel, we'll pass it back to you now.
I am going to go ahead and break convention by agreeing with the broken clocks of Brian and Rachel. It's not, you can always argue styles and everything else, whether it's LitRPG, GameLit, Cultivation, Isekai, anything else. For me, it falls down to whether or not there is clear, defined, showable progression. So it's not, you have to be able to clearly see the scaling up in power. While Dresden is progression fantasy, you never know exactly what he can accomplish, because it's all behind curtains. And I think for LitRPG, it's the curtains are drawn back enough that you can see the stats, or you can see, hey, he leveled up, bullshittery. He's almost Grandmaster James Hunter level in that. And this way you can have that clear defined core that for me is LitRPG. So like at the moment, I feel like I'm more of a Brian level of bullshittery, and I aspire to a Cooper or a Hunter level of bullshittery. And I think one day I might get there.
You're well on your
and
way.
I aspire to be at your level, bro. You kill every fucking release, man. It blows my mind. To add to what I mean, I agree with all of them. The only thing I would say is that it's a mindset. Like, it's not like, this is why, like, I'm about to be at Author Nation. There's a LitRPG panel, and I don't really agree that you can learn how to write it. I think you just write it, and you are in it, and you do it. Like, I don't think like somebody like Actus who kills it. It's just like, how can I? It's just like, he is that. That's what he does, and that's what I like about it, because it embraces a bunch of us who were doing things out of the box. Like when I wrote the feedback loop in 2015, I just missed playing video games, and I wanted to write something about that. And now that I see some of the new stuff that comes out, like I really like where the genre is going, because one of the things that I like is that people are classifying less. Like even the Prog Fantasy Reddit page, which if you're on that page, and it's a shit show sometimes, they are even like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess Dungeon Crawler Carl. Like they're like, they used to not accept LitRPG. In fact, to the point that I was in a private Discord group with authors recently, and they were like ranking the biggest ones, and they were ranking LitRPGs in progression fantasy, and I was like, they're going to let you guys do that? Like they used to like be such bastards about it. And I really mean that. They were really dicks about it. And the LitRPG Reddit was so much cooler about like, we just do whatever like is in the genre. Right. So I think that there's been a relaxing of the gates in a certain way in LitRPG, which I love. I also love that like a lot of stories now, which has changed my game, because I got tired. I mean, I've written so many. I'm on my like 92nd book or something as Harmon Cooper, and that's not including books from a different name that I wrote under in 2015. Like I got tired of having to do the LitRPG start where it's like, okay, something happens, and now he's at level 1 and blah 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 blah. Like I love now that it can just be in a world, and it can almost start in media res, and someone is already in it, and they already have stats, and it's just normal. Like if you read stuff on Royal Road, there isn't like Okay, I mean, you can still do the traditional way, like, okay, wow, I have this new power, and now I'm at level 1. Like, you can still do that, and it still kills. Like, Accidental Champion does that, and it kills. But you can also just like have elements of like you're literally like if you think of like a Dark Souls game, you're just in it, and there are stats there, and they have some impact on the world, and you can progress through them. And I love that the genre has changed that much. So that's my opinion on it. I agree with all they said, everything they said. I think it's more of an ethos and a mindset. Which makes it really hard for someone to write to market.
So a couple of thoughts on again the definition of lit RPG, that it's not really a genre so much as a style. I agree with all that stuff. A couple of things that I want to piggyback off what Harmon said. In a group of pigs, I am 60% sure it's called a Sonder. Okay, it's definitely not a litter. Probably a Sonder. Someone should fact check me in the comments. But going back to this thing that I'm piggybacking Sonder style off of what Harmon Cooper just said. A couple of thoughts. I think that part of the progression of the genre as a whole, like when you go back to the earliest lit RPGs, the reason why so many of them were VR is because no one understood what lit RPG was. And so you needed to have sort of this gentle, it was like a kiddie pool where you had like the zero slope entry to kind of get people into the water and splashing around in a way that they could understand. And so for a lot of early readers, a VR game made the most sense for a lit RPG to exist in. But now the genre's grown so much, and there's so many readers who are already familiar with the tropes and the mechanics of lit RPG that you can just have second world fantasy where the magic system is just game numbers, and there doesn't need to be any explanation because readers already understand sort of the essentials of what the genre is, and that gives us a broader scope for things that can happen in the genre. The other thing, to Harmon's point, why it's hard to write to market is because because the people who are writing in this genre, if I bring James in every meeting, I can just duck behind him when they abuse it. Yeah, I appreciate that, Robert. Thank you. Is that the people who are writing this are fans of the genre, and a lot of the write to market authors, and this is a weird thing as well that I've noticed both as a writer but also as a publisher, the things that are sort of considered traditionally good writing are things that oftentimes absolutely bomb and fail in lit RPG. Kind of the classic character arc where character makes a stupid mistake and then has to overcome their fatal flaw, and then you have lit RPG readers, a lot of them absolutely hate that shit. If your character makes a bad choice that has bad consequences, they will just yeet the book across the room, put it down, that's the end of it. And in traditional sort of literature, that's sort of the expected practice. Your character has a fatal flaw. They're going to make a mistake, and then they have to overcome their fatal flaw. This is like the hero's journey 101. And lit RPG writers don't do that at all because a lot of them were just readers. They were fans of the genre, and they just write what they want to read. And they don't want to read about a dude who's got a fatal flaw and then needs to arduously overcome this thing. They want to read about a dude who's super badass and like kicks all the asses and takes all the names. It is awesome. And so that's what they end up writing. And it's really hard to emulate that unless you're already a staunch reader and fan of the genre.
And that's why we'll never have James Hunter, lit RPG.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. We did have a question come in here from the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in at any time. We will try to make time to get there. So what would you suggest as a book for a brand new reader of lit RPG? Something as a great introduction to the genre itself. Harmon, we'll start with you.
I mean, I just recommended it in terms Accidental Champion. I'm listening to that right now, and it's new. So if you want to like, I want to see what's like the newest. It's but like to anybody on this panel, it's just what you would expect, but it's very simple. It's like a university student who he gets brought into a situation where now he has levels and there's goblins and he has to protect his academy and he's at level 1 all of a sudden. But he happens just to be a fantasy writer. So he knows what he's doing. That's very, it's enjoyable, and it's a very easy way to get into it. That would be something new. Something old, of course, like Send Online. That's one of the ones that people always recommend that just kind of allows you to get into what it would be like. Everyone recommends Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I obviously do as well. I don't know if it's a great first book, just because like it is so. It'll make the expectations of other books like it'll be hard to live up to the expectations of that book. And also it's very deep, and it gets, especially like when we get to book 6, it's beyond any other lit RPG. So I don't know if I would recommend that as a first one, but it's definitely one that everyone should have read by the point they're watching this panel.
All right, Rachel, I'm going to go to you next for this one. Mixing it up.
I was Googling this author's surname, so if I fuck it up, I apologize. So if you're just trying to get someone like into LitRPG, like if it's a friend who's kind of scared of numbers and stuff, then Orconomics by Zachary Pike, I think, is like a good, it's not LitRPG, but it's like a good way to kind of get them like into the idea. And then if they haven't run Screaming, Savage Dominion by Luke Chilminko, and thank you, and GD Penman. I just read it. It was everything I love about LitRPG. It's got a great system, really funny dialogue, great world building, and it's 3 books, so it's not too scary, like straight off the bat. And then if you want to get someone into it who is into maybe rom-coms and the lighter stuff, either Heretical Fishing or I Ran Away to Evil are always my 2 recommendations. So yeah.
Ooh. Brian, move over to you next.
It really depends, because like I think that like if you're ever recommending, your friend. Okay, so the thing is that they're going to have very different types. Like I'm not going to maybe suggest Cinnamon Bun to like the staunch militaristic guy, but I will say to someone that's like, hey, I just like, Stardew Valley and I love Animal Crossing, and I'm like, here you go. And like, So it really, really depends on the individual. Like for a lot of us starting out, VR was all that was there. So, and then it then went on. And so if people like anime, I'll be like, okay, isekai, because you're very familiar with these plots. So it really, really depends. I think that if you want to go with the more mainstream now, Dungeon Crawler Carl is an excellent kind of one. Like, if people like audiobooks, you're like, definitely do the audio for that one. And then others like, you have Iron Prince by Bryce O'Connor. There's so many different ones for different people. Oh, I'm feeling a bit sci-fi, or I'm feeling a bit this. It really depends. That we have such a range now where it's not like, if you don't like this, you hate LitRPG. It's like, if you don't like any of these 30, you probably don't like LitRPG. But I could be wrong. So.
Makes sense. James, pass it to you next.
So DCC is great for a lot of reasons. I think it's a really well-told story. Matt's a great writer. It's dark though, so kind of read the room, know who your friend is. If they're big Rick and Morty fans, sure, they'll probably be fine with DCC. If they're a little bit more Brandon Sanderson high fantasy, that's probably not going to be a great fit. It's very irreverent. It's not going to work well. So kind of read the room. But I think DCC is great because it does give a plausible reason why a system exists. And so my recommendation for someone who's absolutely brand new to the genre is maybe not to recommend some of the newer, more popular books, because they kind of have the assumption that the audience is familiar enough with the tropes that they don't need an on-ramp to explain what LitRPG is. And so some of those readers are going to get into it and they're going to be like, man, I don't fucking know what's going on. There's weird numbers and stuff. I don't understand this. And then they're going to walk away. So I think some of the older, I still recommend a lot of the VR stuff for like brand new readers, like some of the earlier VR stuff, because again, it's like a wading pool, right? It's a way for someone who's completely new to the genre and does not understand why LitRPG exists or how it works to instantly grab onto the idea and be like, oh, okay, so it's like they're in this game and there are game mechanics that are happening that impact the story in a fundamentally visceral way. They can latch onto that idea, and then it allows them to sort of step onto other things that maybe don't have that set up. So I think there's a lot of great books out there that kind of meet those criteria. DCC is certainly a good one. Again, despite Brian's general Brianness, I think Quest Academy was actually excellent and does a pretty good job of sort of explaining the system. And because there's sort of this magical academy backdrop, kind of walks through the system in a great way. Rachel's book also sort of does that well. So there's a lot of great books that you can read, newer and older, but some of the VR ones, even though they're not sort of in trend right now, I think are still great starting points for a lot of brand new readers and very easily bridge the gap from sort of the high fantasy audience or the sci-fi audience sort of and bring them into the LitRPG fold.
And I will add to what James said. That's because when those were written, because James and I were both writing some of them, we had to do that at the time. Basically, because we had to be able to explain what it was. So that's why they're really good for bridging that gap.
Yeah, so I was going to do basically what Eric was doing here in the comments, which is the overarching whole takeaway from this entire panel is Brian books good, Brian person bad. So Daniel, if you'd like to if you'd like to give some recommendations as well for a good starting place for people.
Words hard panel morning. Yes, got it. Going back to what Brian and James said, it's always going to depend on who you're talking to. If you've already read it and you're trying to get somebody else into the genre, you should know your friend, hopefully, or coworker if you're doing that, and if you have coworkers, and if you're talking to coworkers, in that case you're just weird. But you should know at least kind of the personality, so you can be, oh hey, dark humor works, or oh this should be lighter, this should be lighter and fluffier. Whether I'm doing Dinneman's work or I'm giving them Baldry's very cozy slice of life book, it's going to depend on the audience. To just get them into the overall arcing idea of LitRPG, though, James is right. I would go back to some of the earlier books in the genre, because those help set the basis of, okay, we're going to explain how things work bit by bit by bit. But some of the newer stuff doesn't, because we expect the genre to have caught on to most of it. Now, most books, even newer, still at least have to walk you through why this system is unique in some way, so you can work with that. So it's all going to come down to what they're going to like, whether or not they think James Hunter is a horrible individual and Brian is great, and therefore Brian's book's going to beat out Hunter's books hands down.
He's a better writer than me, hands down. I think
Never. Hey, you had your turn. You had your turn. You had your turn, sir. You had your turn.
No, let's give him more turns. Let's give him more turns.
Sorry,
no.
Jerry.
Pipe down.
Ricky.
Let me continue. Thank you. Jeez, it's so hard to get respect around Hunter, because he's just, such a big name that his head swells up and he's like, I have to talk all the time. It's so frustrating. I want to be more like
Daniel,
Rachel, who's just
Daniel,
and Irish and can kick somebody in the knee. Cooper,
No, I have a request for you. You're friends with Hunter. Get me his autograph while we're in Vegas. That's all I'm asking. I know that you know him, so.
I would, but I don't have that kind of pocket money. I hear the fees for the autograph are kind of pricey.
Does he take Bitcoin?
I think it's in the amount of Bitcoin you can offer, because it's not like, 1 bit is going to be enough.
I actually have a signed copy of one of his books, but he told me to die in a fire, whatever that means. It was really bizarre, and but yeah,
I think it means I love you in American. That's what I've heard.
Must be.
I think that Matt Dinneman signed your book as James Hunter, if that's what it said in it. Because
no, I have one from Matt that just says "fuck you" in giant letters.
So Daniel, so thanks, Daniel, for those recommendations. Just as a point to say it, because I haven't heard anybody really talk a whole lot about this style yet, because I know we're talking about more of the crunchy side of the LitRPGs, but something that I've seen through friends that I have who have come up to me saying, "I hear you're writing LitRPG," and I've gotten into that genre now. Was He Who Fights with Monsters was something that a lot of people said, "Oh, this is where I found that," and then the recommendations that came after that were all LitRPG books. So it's interesting to see where people's introduction points would be with some of these books. To never see these things before.
Dakota Crouch stuff as well. We for someone like I was thinking that when James was talking about like someone more into Brandon Sanderson, Dakota Crouch would be the someone you could recommend as well to help you get into the genre.
It's true. We did have another question come in from earlier from Robert. If you could have one stat that came in to the real world that you could level up, what would it be and why? And I'm going to throw it to Brian first to give you the least amount of time to think.
Okay. I've been single a very long time. Probably a charm stat. That would probably make the most amount of sense, which would really help with selling books. How would I level it though?
No, you would need to level it though.
Oh yeah, but I can practice in front of
no good if you can't actually level it, Brian.
How dare you? I've learned a lot from The Sims, and I can talk to the mirror. Okay.
Oh, good. He's gonna start drowning people in pools because he took the ladder out.
You're gonna cheese it by just talking to the mirror. You can just keep charming yourself to try to cheese it.
Yeah, it's called therapy.
You just
You're
look,
great. You're great.
I fear all that's going to happen is you're going to end up with a really buff right arm, and we're not going to really be able to level that stat in the way you want to. So maybe a different stat would be good.
How dare
But
you?
he might be a good arm wrestler, though.
I hear he can go both ways. It's fine, righty and lefty.
Oh, ambidextrous, I see.
I think honestly, like a real answer for it though would probably be focus. If I could have the focus stat, and then like as you're writing, that it gets better, like, you know, that you're able to just get into the flow state and zone, that would be absolutely brilliant. I'd 100% be Sal in that instance of just being like, the world doesn't exist. I'm just doing my thing.
Really glad you gave the definition, because it sounded a little bit like you were going with a charm stat again with the fuck us stat. I just want to make sure we weren't on the.
I think, Brian, there's actually a stat for that. It's called Adderall. It's a consumable.
Not available in Ireland.
That will help with that. So maybe take a look at that.
Meth? They have meth there, right?
Meth,
that's basically
yeah.
the same thing. Rachel, I'll pass it on to you next.
Sorry, I'm just picturing Brian at home alone talking in the mirror, thinking it's going to help him make friends.
You are good enough, Brian. People do like you.
Mirror Brian loves Brian, okay? You can't take Mirror Brian away from him.
Oh, I haven't had such a sad image in a while. Anyway, considering how I play D&D and approach life in general, I would really love if someone could help me level up my intelligence stat. That would be really helpful considering some of my life decisions. Yeah, intelligence. How would I level it up? Obviously, like they do in Dodgeball, which is sit down and read the dictionary. That's how you get smarter, right?
You can dodge a wrench, you can become more intelligent. Is that where we're going with this?
Dodge. Yep. There you go.
All right, Daniel, how about you next?
Well, I definitely don't want to increase my intelligence, because then I'll know about why I made all the bad choices in life I made, and it won't stop me from making bad choices later. It'll just mean I know that I'm making the bad choice instead of being surprised by it. I'd much rather be surprised by the bad choice. Honestly, I would love to level up my writing stat, so I don't need my editors to come back to me so often with dude, do you not know where the comma goes, and do you not know how this word actually conjugates into the other word? So no, I only know how to conjugate one way, and it's definitely not words.
Conjugate.
Yeah, also going to avoid intelligence. I would only become intelligent enough to realize how dumb I am. It would be a terrible combination. So the easy cheater answer is obviously luck. Like my grandpa always used to say, I'd rather be lucky than good any day of the week. Like, I don't know how you would level that, but damn, if I could get a fully leveled luck stat, hands down, any day of the week, that's what I'm going to take. Barring that, since I know that a lot of LitRPG readers are like, you can't quantify luck, you can't have a luck stat. So barring that, obviously charisma. I'm just gonna boost that thing all the way through the roof, and then I'm just gonna charm everyone. No one will realize how dumb I am because I will be so incredibly charismatic. This is the best and only solution for my build, I think.
James, I'd love to point out that you've already burnt every bit of luck you had by marrying your wife.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I mean, that's like the secret to everyone asks me, like, James Hunter, how are you so successful? And I always tell them, the secret to success is marrying someone who's better and more intelligent and smarter and more hardworking than you. That's it. I mean, and then kind of ride their coattails all the way to the top. So,
and I would like to point out that since you are married, you have a 0 in charisma when talking outside of your wife, because no one else is going to listen to you at all.
I appreciate that. That's why I need absolutely max level charisma. That's the goal.
All right, Harmon, when will let you get on this one?
I'm so bad at LitRPG that my whole time I was thinking, like, what would be the superpower I would like to have if I could get some type of skill? And then I realized, like, oh, we're talking about stats. So I guess focus would be the correct answer to that, because contrary to popular belief, I mean, I have the worst focus probably of anyone in this group, but I can barely write sometimes, yet I do it, but only because I don't have a wife. I do have a wife. I don't have children or pets or anything to really distract me. So I can literally just work the entire day. I basically just go to the gym and I work the entire day. So I can like squeeze out enough that it actually adds up. So focus would be nice. However, if there was a power, I would like the power to quick save. So I could like quick save and then make a decision and then see if it was the right decision. That would be cool. I actually pitched an idea once about a book called Quick Save, and I still like that idea.
Also, it's like focus for the guy that's written 91 books. I mean, I'm not going to say that you don't have focus, but I'm going to think it heavily in my brain.
I really don't, like, oh my God, like I have to police myself like so much because I can't barely. It's like I have all these things blocking me from using the internet. Like I'll get messages and I'll be like, I can't respond to my emails right now because I've locked myself out of my emails. I'll get them from like Podium or something, but then of course I'll get on WhatsApp and like contact my rep that way. So yeah, I have very, very, very terrible focus. I just have a lot of time.
All right, so we are down to about 5 minutes left, and I want to give everybody one last chance before, and if we have a little extra time, we can keep going, but I want to give everybody one last chance to do the little plugins here, get out what you guys are working on, where we can find you, where I think Geneva has some links to post for us in the chats to make sure that everybody knows where to go and find those. Brian, let's start off with you.
I'm the incredibly humble author, Brian J. Norden, that wrote a little series called Quest Academy.
Is humble spelled ASS? Because that's what James keeps telling me.
See, look, there it is. Yeah, one of my adoring fans. So, sorry, no, I'm Brian. I write Quest Academy. 3 books are out so far. Book 4 is 3/4 of the way done. And the audiobook for book 3 comes out on the 28th of January.
Awesome. Rachel Neekirk, let's pass it on to you.
Hey, my name is Rachel Neekirk. Before I did this, I was a video game writer. I worked on Baldur's Gate 3, and then I read LitRPG, and I absolutely fell in love with it. The entire trilogy, the Knights Eternity trilogy, is going to be out by the 1st of November, and I got a lovely message from a beta reader telling me that they cried at the end of the series, and that they were angry but also very happy with me, so I called that a win. Yeah, that's my first one. Wait. And here's the second.
So
yeah.
Good.
So yeah, and they're narrated by Andrea Parsnow, who makes my words sound good because I can't do that. Yeah. Enjoy.
Awesome. Harmon, let's pass it to you next.
HarmonCooper.com. I generally update that whenever I have a release. I also didn't mention earlier, I have a co-write I'm working on with Luke Chimolenko. It's halfway done now, and it will be out next year. The first book is called Aether Forged Rebirth. It's LitRPG progression fantasy, and it is pretty freaking awesome because we are very different kinds of writers. He's very much a plotter, and I am very much a gardener. I don't consider myself a pantser, but I very much just go with the flow. And being able to work within his system, but with my own flow, it's an amazing creation. It takes me a lot of time to do it. I've been working on it, on my part of it, since February. So it will be out next year. I have that coming. I have Doom System Survivor on Royal Road right now. Really proud of this one because I actually started it in January, but I have so many other projects that I couldn't really focus on it. So I just wrote a couple of chapters a month, and because I love writing it, and I'm finally got up to 50 chapters. And so I'm now writing it because it'll be out next year through Aethon Books, and I'm publishing a chapter every day. And so that's what's up. And right now on Amazon, Reborn Assassin just came out, hence my mask.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Harmon. James?
Yeah, so I'm James Hunter. You can find all my books. I think Geneva's going to post my link tree. All my books are there. If you want a good intro to LitRPG, Viridian Gate Online, 8 books, complete series. You don't have to worry about me not finishing it, which is a problem in the genre. If you like DCC, this is also a great one, kind of in that same vein. You can find it on Royal Road, or it will be out next year. I also run Shadow
James,
Alley
we may not all be
Press.
able to read it.
Yeah. I also run Shadow Alley Press with my wife, Jeanette. We publish lots of great books on Nintendo Cultivator, Bog Standard Isekai, Apocalypse Redux. You can find all of my books and also the books that we publish on shadowalleypress.com.
For those who weren't able to see it, that was called Discount Dan. You didn't actually say the name.
Discount Dan, yeah, that's the one right there.
There we go.
You can also sign up for ARCs through my link tree if you're interested in getting an advanced reader copy.
Awesome. And Daniel.
I'm sorry, I totally missed the question because I got stuck behind James's fast patter of these are my books. Oh, we're supposed to pimp ourselves. I'm sorry. That explains James, but James always pimps himself, so I get confused every time. I do thank him though for having my book on hand because mine's on my bookshelf back there. The next book I have coming out is Heavenly Chaos 2. It's the second book of that series. It is called Fighting Past Pain. It'll be out at the end of the month. If you want the extensive catalog of everything that I've written, you can find it all on Amazon. You can also just look for me on Discord, Facebook, so on and so on and so on. But I have 9 series, and I think the majority of them at this point are complete. So I want to throw back to Rachel's probably not the panel to be like, and I'm gonna finish a series because but it's okay. We had to at least give everyone a little bit of shade because it's hot out there and you have to be well shaded. Nobody gets shaded as well as James and Brian, though. They've been very, very, very shaded from the burns this time. But I want to just once again state that if you are looking for adult books that do not shy away from what people do, whether that is in their own bedroom or mass murdering people like James, I mean, leveling up through experience. No, I don't want hurting anyone. It's fine.
I played a red cap in D&D who literally couldn't kill people. That's my whole thing. I don't like hurting.
Really, James. We know what Woodle also had with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jimmy. So real quick, my pitch. I'm not going to get to play in the D&D campaign because there's too many, but I want to play a character called Jimmy Heels, who's a cleric, but he's got Heelys like on the wheels, so his movement speed, and he like Heelys around the battle. So that's my pitch. If Geneva lets me
play stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there, James. I already gave a character a pair of Heelys in Doom System Survivor because I wanted to use unconventional weapons. For example, my MC has a vape pen that he can change cartridges that blow out different tyes of poisonous effects and things like that. Like
you're a main character.
So I already got Heelys covered for you, bro.
Yeah,
James made me a fact comparison in his story.
Jimmy Heels. Which is a double play on the fact that he's a cleric healer with Heelys. Okay, don't take this from me, Harmon.
If he's a wrestler, then that would be awesome too, because then he could be a heel.
All right, guys. Well, we have hit 10:02, and it's going to be time for us to sign off to make sure that we let everybody else get a chance to say in there to get into the next panel that's going to be coming up. I believe it's a takeover coming up next. But I want to thank you guys all for coming and joining in and being here on this panel. You guys are all amazing. We really do love each and every one of you and appreciate the time that you're putting into coming and saying hi to us and being here with us. So we're going to go ahead and do our little awkward wave before we leave, getting ready for the next panel.
You're not waving, James. You're not waving.